King Hiss, the true ruler of Eternia.
For over 4 decades, Masters of the Universe has become one of the most iconic fantasy franchises in pop culture. From the toy shelves in the 1980s to the animated reboots and the comic revivals, it has managed to stand the test of time only because the franchise understands just how much the heroes matter to us. Even now, Prince Adam, aka the legendary He-Man, is the embodiment of strength, honor, and moral clarity. He is not just powerful, but an aspirational hero who represents courage in the face of darkness. A champion who wields the power of Grayskull not for glory, but to protect Eternia and those who cannot protect themselves. But even the greatest hero is only as great as the threats he faces. Because let's just be honest, this franchise would not have stood out without its unforgettable villain arcs. As you know, the Masters of the Universe franchise has 3 big villain factions: Skeletor's evil warriors, Hordak's evil horde, and King Hiss's snakemen. While Skeletor's obsession with Castle Grayskull has always been He-Man's main pain in the ass, I think the snakemen, led by the serpentine sorcerer King Hiss, brought in a much darker and more mythological layer to Eternia's history. These characters were introduced pretty late in the original 1980s toy line, and maybe that is what makes them feel like a hidden or cult favorite faction. Eventually, when the snakemen were expanded in the 2002 animated series, we realized that they were not mere conquerors, but rather a forgotten empire of ancient species that once ruled Eternia before being banished. Their return reframed the battle for the planet as something older and more primal than Skeletor's schemes. So, with a new live-action Masters of the Universe reboot on the horizon, it is only fair that we trip down the memory lane to discuss the entire history of snakemen in the coveted He-Man franchise. Who are the snakemen? Well, if I had to summarize the answer to that question in one line, I would say the snakemen are simply another evil faction who sought to conquer Eternia in its ancient past, and after being imprisoned for centuries, they were brought to the present with only one goal in mind, and that is vengeance. In fact, the Masters of the Universe classic storyline specifically states that the snakemen were created from the DNA splicing of 3 cold-blooded alien races like the Clibian lizardmen, and were then bred by the unnamed one. Well, we don't do that here, so get cozy because this will be nothing short of a deep dive. Having said that, you know, what's worse than snakes? For me, it is a dude who is made up of 5 snakes that talk in unison. If you are a die-hard fan of this franchise, you probably know that King Hiss is old, so old that he fought against King Grayskull, the guy whom Castle Grayskull is eventually named after. In fact, an unproduced spin-off prequel show called Powers of Grayskull was set to depict the king and the cosmic warrior Hero fighting against Hordak and King Hiss. But oh well, that has been shelved for good. Now, King Hiss was trapped in limbo for a very long time until he was freed by Skeletor. Unlike Skeletor, who is mean to his bumbling minions, King Hiss has some pretty good allies and treats them surprisingly well. This is what helps him have a dedicated snake army at his back. As the ruler of the snakemen, King Hiss can easily shed his human-like skin to become a twisting mass of 5-headed Hydra or Shesha-like snakes from the waist up. Apparently, in the distant past, his army of snakemen had conquered numerous worlds, including Eternia, but they were defeated by Hordak with his own great army because he also planned on conquering the various worlds. Eventually, King Hiss again tried to conquer Eternia after King Grayskull's defeat at the hand of the Horde. Yet again, he failed. However, as a punishment, the Elders of Eternia used their vast powers to cast his army of snakemen into a limbo-like dimension. During this time, King Hiss himself was sealed beneath his Snake Mountain, which was his base. In the 2002 continuity, Snake Mountain is literally Serpos petrified. King Hiss later uses the Medallion of Serpos to awaken him, but more on that later, people. And over time, the base was taken over by Skeletor and it became the base for his forces. The few remaining snake men who had not been imprisoned in the limbo-like dimension joined Skeletor, and one of them was named Cobra Khan, who used to be a passionate follower of King Hiss. Now, after Cobra Khan figured out where King Hiss had been sealed away, he teamed up with another snake man named General Rattler and freed their king from his confinement by using Zodak's cosmic staff. After being freed, King Hiss defeated Skeletor and his minions, took back control of his base, and also accepted Evil Lyn as a new follower, even though she used to be a loyal minion of Skeletor. Now that King Hiss was free, he used his own magical powers to release his vast army from their prison in the limbo-like dimension and began his plans to conquer all of Eternia. During his conquest of Eternia, King Hiss battled with the great hero He-Man and the other masters of the universe, but was eventually defeated. In the aftermath, King Hiss's army was in utter ruins, leaving only a handful of snake men to do his bidding. In a desperate attempt to conquer the world, he ended up releasing the snake god from its prison, and with its help, King Hiss set his sights on Castle Grayskull. Once they reached outside of the castle, He-Man battled with the snake god, while Zodak battled King Hiss. After He-Man and Zodak were both victorious, the snake god itself ended up summoning the power of Grayskull and was then imprisoned back into limbo. As a result of this, King Hiss was also defeated and lost vast amounts of his powers. King Hiss was at the peak of his power in the Master of Universe mini-comics. In this storyline, King Hiss was introduced as the ruler of a race of interstellar conquerors, although he actually served as a mysterious entity known as the Unnamed One. Although his people were a race of humanoid snakes, Hiss had a human appearance, which was pretty much a disguise that helped him hide his true form, which, like I have previously mentioned, is an upper body of 5 intertwined serpents. After forming an empire that spanned across the stars, Hiss and his armies arrived on Eternia, where they finally constructed Snake Mountain as the ultimate base for their operations. Over time, Hiss and his snake men fought a protracted war of conquest across the planet, where they were eventually overcome by the combined magic powers of the planet's elders, Hero and his mentor, Eldor, whose magic ended up flinging King Hiss and his army into a limbo-like dimension. After being imprisoned for centuries, King Hiss was finally freed by Skeletor, who basically wanted to learn the secrets of the snake men from him. The two villains then formed an uneasy alliance to conquer Eternia and destroy its champion, He-Man, but they also vowed to eliminate the other once their mutual enemy was destroyed. King Hiss tried to bring back the full might of his army from the dimensional prison in which he had been trapped, but only succeeded in summoning Tung Lashor and Ratlor instead of his vast forces. He was furious when he realized that some of them had served his old enemy Hordak during his banishment. But more importantly, Hiss realized that the dark magic they were using wasn't strong enough to bring back their entire army, so they decided to use He-Man's power sword after believing its ancient power could fuel the ritual to unleash the full might of the snake men upon Eternia once more. But of course, He-Man isn't defeated so easily. Breaking free at the last possible second, he reclaims the power sword before the spell can be completed. With its power restored to its rightful wielder, the ritual collapses, and the mass resurrection of the snake men is stopped in its tracks. Despite their initial setback, King Hiss would later combine his powers with Skeletor's in order to raise the legendary 3 Towers of Eternia that had been buried eons ago by the Elders of Eternia. The Elders had apparently sunk these towers below the earth to ensure that they would never fall into the hands of the snake men or any other evil forces for that matter. Now, these 3 towers were Grayskull Tower, which possessed the power of good, Viper Tower, possessing the power of evil, and Central Tower, which possessed the power of both. While Skeletor failed to conquer the Central Tower, which would have given him the power of all 3 towers, King Hiss successfully managed to seize Viper Tower, which not only amped up his powers, but also gave him a powerful hypnotic ability that was even capable of putting He-Man into a stupor. Hiss then used the magic of the Viper Tower to transport 2 more snake men from limbo, Snakeface and Squeeze. But not long after, in a battle in Viper Tower, He-Man turned all the snake men into stone by reflecting Snakeface's power of petrification back at them. Later on in the mini-comics, when He-Man and the Sorceress went back into Eternia's past to the time when the snakemen had originally invaded Eternia. They witnessed hordes of snakemen terrorizing a village. Instinctually, He-Man wanted to step in and save them. However, the sorceress stopped him as it could alter history. Now, they had no clue that Skeletor had also followed them through the time stream, and upon his arrival, he allied himself with King Hiss by claiming that he wished to help them and that his magic powers could destroy the elders. King Hiss accepted this offer as he believed Skeletor to be an emissary from the unnamed one whom he served. And so the snakemen rode into the battle on the backs of mechanically augmented dinosaurs. After seeing that Skeletor had entered the past, the sorceress decided that it was finally necessary for He-Man to become involved, and so she disguised him with her magic and sent him into battle against Skeletor, King Hiss, and the Snake Man army. However, before the battle could conclude, Hero intervened and used his magic to hurl Skeletor, the sorceress, and He-Man back to the future. Sadly, what became of the Snake Men was never revealed, as the Masters of Universe storyline and its accompanying mini-comics came to an end. King Hiss and He-Man in the Masters of the Universe 2002. So the Snake Men actually play a larger role in the second season of the Mike Young Productions cartoon series. In fact, upon reruns, the second season was renamed Masters of the Universe versus the Snakemen. Here, they are portrayed as a diverse group led by King Hiss, who proved to be as much a danger as Skeletor. In fact, Skeletor only makes 3 appearances throughout the entire story arc. Similar to the old story in the franchise, here too, the Snakemen are an ancient threat that plagued Eternia in the distant past until they were locked away in the void by the power of the elders. But in this storyline, the threat of the Snakemen was so ancient that in a way it predated the creation of the elders themselves and dated to the time of King Grayskull, who fought against this menace. However, in this new version, they are presented as a very strong army, or not just fighting He-Man, but are also at war with Skeletor instead of forging an alliance with him. Now, going into the gory details of the 2002 cartoon series, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe immediately establishes how King Hiss and his serpentine army have been plaguing Eternia since the ancient past. In this lore too, Hiss used Snake Mountain as his stronghold, but his base of operations was actually the petrified body of the Great Serpus. As usual, the evil Horde, led by Hordak, saw the Snakemen as a threat and launched a war against them. In the wake of the battle, even if his forces were depleted, Hordak set his sights on King Grayskull. Of course, that did not end well, as it led Grayskull to banish the Horde to Despondos before the king himself fell in battle. That fiasco allowed King Hiss to rebuild his own army from scratch, and even if Hordak was gone, Hiss now began to fight the Council of Elders that were formed after the death of King Grayskull. Tired of Hiss's constant threats, the Elders decided to send Zilar as their emissary against King Hiss, but of course, the villain did not care for any sort of negotiation, and instead he ended up devouring Zilar right in front of his brother Zodak. Naturally, Zodak was devastated and traumatized and began to hate Hiss intensely. In order to seek vengeance, Zodak and the Elders combined their strength and sealed Hiss and his armies away in a void beneath Snake Mountain, where they would be trapped for thousands of years. Of course, the story at this point sounds a bit repetitive, but that's what happens when a coveted franchise reboots its cult characters for every new generation. Anyway, centuries later, King Hiss would nearly escape from the void after Cobra Khan tried to get him out. While he failed to escape on this occasion, his loyal General Ratlor did manage to free himself from the timeless prison and then teamed up with Cobra Khan to plot to the return of their king. Ratlor and Cobra Khan went to Evil Land with their plans, and together they ambushed Zodak, took his staff, and used it as the key to the void that their king was trapped in. Hiss was free at last, but the villain did not waste a second to reclaim his throne. Hiss not only overthrew Skeletor, but also defeated all his evil warriors effortlessly. Initially, he was planning to eat Evil Lyn after being super disgusted by her arrogance, but Hiss agreed to spare her on the condition that she would reveal to him where the power of the elders now resided and take him to Castle Grayskull. Hiss immediately got to work as he assaulted Grayskull with his army, and working in tandem with Evil Lyn, he managed to open the drawbridge of the castle and enter the sorceress' throne room. After a fierce magical duel, Hiss ended up poisoning the sorceress with his magic and then entered the crystal chamber beneath Grayskull. As he was preparing to claim the power of the elders, Hiss was confronted by his old enemy, Zodak, and just like that, another intensely vicious battle ensued throughout the chamber. Luckily, Zodak ended up winning, and after carrying Hiss's body to the top of the castle, where he told the snakemen that their leader had fallen, and then tossed their king's body into the chasm beneath Castle Grayskull. The distraught snakemen believed their leader to be dead and jumped after his body by plunging into the chasm. But in reality, King Hiss had actually survived. He quickly prepared to resume his plans to conquer Eternia, and his first scheme involved recovering the Serpent's Ring, which was an ancient artifact that could turn human beings into snakemen. Meaning now that his snakemen were gone, Hiss had to build an army from scratch. Unfortunately, the villain failed to use the Serpent's Ring to conquer Eternia, and then went on to engineer his next mega plan to release the ancient snake god, Serpus. But he briefly put his plan on hold when he heard Evil Lyn was planning to release his old enemy, Hordak. After Hiss made sure that Hordak could never free himself from Despondos, he was eventually successful in awakening Serpus, who was apparently sealed in the stone serpent coiled around Snake Mountain. Following this, Hiss personally rode Serpus into battle and was on his way to Castle Grayskull before being intercepted by Zodak. The two enemies then fought once more, with Hiss appearing to have the upper hand, but Zodak, having been planning this confrontation for some time now, used his mental abilities to take control of King Hiss's heads. Whilst he was in his snake form, Zodak then made sure that 4 of Hiss's heads would turn on the main head and devour it, apparently killing Hiss. Meanwhile, He-Man and the sorceress once again turned Serpus to stone, thus restoring the snake god to its place on Snake Mountain, though now with 2 additional heads. After an intense battle, Hiss's body was given to the heroic warriors, who, despite it seeming lifeless, placed it in an Eternian prison. I guess they understood the possibilities of the Serpentine villain making a comeback and did not want to take any chances. Rightly so, because Hiss did not end up regenerating his main head, and later his body was recovered from an Eternian prison by a vengeful Skeletor, and then taken for recuperation in a cell at Snake Mountain. After healing himself, Hiss surprised Skeletor and the two fought across Snake Mountain, eventually toppling over a lava waterfall after fighting to a standstill. The battle was ultimately broken up by the arrival of Skeletor's evil warriors and Hiss's snakemen, forcing the Serpentine villain to retreat. Later, after regrouping with his men, Hiss shockingly revealed that he had transformed Man-at-Arms, Teela, and Mekaneck into a snake man. By using the Serpent's Ring, they not only turned into snake-like versions of themselves, but were also twisted in appearance and were now loyal to King Hiss. Meanwhile, back at the palace, Orko and Roboto take a different approach as they capture Rattler and Snakeface and begin an interrogation to uncover how to reverse the transformations. Orko uses an unorthodox yet surprisingly effective method by conjuring a giant mongoose to terrify the prisoners, and surprisingly, this tactic works because Rattler was clearly unnerved and went on to reveal that the Serpent's Ring cannot be destroyed by any known means on Eternia. During this time, we see a transformed Man-at-Arms, Teela, and Mekaneck, who are now under King Hiss's control, return to confront He-Man. Of course, the ensuing battle is fierce, as Snake-at-Arms' deadly precision and strength pushes He-Man to his very limits. Plus, Teela and Mekaneck also force He-Man into a desperate struggle to save not only himself but his friends. Luckily, Orko and Roboto came to their rescue with vital intel, and that is how He-Man learns that while the ring itself is indestructible, its magic can be undone. Drawing upon his unwavering resolve and the bonds he shares with his friends, He-Man manages to reverse the transformations to bring Man-at-Arms, Teela, and Mekaneck back to their true selves. Well, over the next few episodes, we see King Hiss and the Snakemen rise again and again to seize Eternia, but every time He-Man and his friends stop him, because good always triumphs over evil.
You can't turn me to stone! My eyes are closed!
DC Comics brought the snakemen and King Hiss back once again. In this lore, King Hiss appeared in the new 52 He-Man and the Masters of the Universe comic series during the quest for the new sorceress that led He-Man and his allies through the realm of the dead. To the party's utter surprise, it was King Randor who was driving their airship deliberately into the ground. Now, after He-Man dug his father out and demanded to know why he would crash the airship, Randor's arms suddenly split open, allowing Hiss to reveal himself. The Serpentine villain then told He-Man that Randor had been dead for a very long time and went on to taunt He-Man that it was fully possible that Randor had been dead when Adam and Adora were born. Hiss never really tells him the truth about Randor's death and instead orders the race of snakemen to arise from the dead, since with He-Man in the realm of the dead, they will finally have the power to do so. After a brief battle, the snakemen, who were now in their hundreds, take He-Man to the Starseed with all intention of sacrificing him in order to enable the resurrection of the snakemen as the ultimate dominant race on Eternia. But just before they could do so, Stratos flew over and delivered Teela right in front of them. When Teela asked Hiss to face her, he swatted her away like a housefly and caused her to end up in the Starseed. But in here, the spirit of Teela Na granted her the power which was her birthright, and that immediately changed her into the goddess. When Teela emerges from the Starseed as the goddess, Hiss proclaims how after so many eons of waiting for the opportunity to bring the snakemen back under his rule, he isn't going to accept the goddess stealing his thunder. But with the other snakemen bowing down in worship, Hiss ended up losing all control over his own people. In retaliation, he tried to bring down the goddess, but was stopped by He-Man, who punched Hiss so hard that he fell into the abyss. Afterwards, we see the goddess take the snakemen to their ancient home, the Snake Mountain, where they crown He-Man to be the new king. But as Stratus and He-Man reflect on their chances of winning the battle against the evil horde, with a whole army of snakemen on their side, He-Man says that he will not be accepting the crown until the battle is won. According to the hero, with the sudden loss of King Randor and with Teela having become the goddess, even a victory over the horde will feel like a hollow victory to him. He-Man then breaks down and says that the price of his victory has been too great. Meanwhile, on Etheria, Adora is hailed by an old woman asking her for some water. After having received it, the woman wishes Adora well, but also warns her to look out for what the future might hold, after which her eyes turn into snake eyes, thus implying that they may not have seen the last of King Hiss. How does King Hiss control the Snake Mountain, aka Serpus? So, in the original 1980s Filmation cartoons, King Hiss and the god serpent Serpus actually do not appear, but they do show up in the 2002 TV series as the main focus of the Snakemen storyline. After Snake Mountain is revealed as the petrified body of Serpus, who was the ancient serpent god of the Snakemen, it turns out that the Council of Elders had magically bound Serpos in a solid rock or the dark hemisphere of Eternia to form Snake Mountain. It was King Hiss who eventually recovered the medallion of Serpos from the Subterranean Temple of Serpus and used it to awaken Serpus. This basically transformed Snake Mountain from lifeless stone into the living three-headed snake god again. Luckily, He-Man and the heroes battled Serpus, and after Hiss's defeat, Serpus was resealed, allowing the Snake Mountain to revert back to stone. Let's break down King Hiss's anatomy in detail. King Hiss is one of the most powerful sorcerers in the Master of the Universe franchise. So initially, in the original 1980s mini-comics and toy lore, King Hiss was introduced as a powerful sorcerer. His true snake form granted him hypnotic powers, and by meeting He-Man's gaze, he could stupefy even the strongest warrior. In King of the Snakemen, he and Skeletor combined their magic to summon snakemen from the void using dark rituals and the power of Eternia's towers. In fact, at certain points, Hiss could make his enemies unconscious just by looking at them. Hiss's snake god heritage endowed him with the kind of sorcery that could even rival the Elders of Eternia. But his magic grew extremely potent in the 2002 Mike Young series, to a point that the sorceress herself remarked that his power was as great as the Elders. He can easily cast deadly spells, like the time he used his sorcery to poison the sorceress during a battle at Castle Grayskull. He can also cast powerful conjurations, and after freeing himself, he even forged weapons and spells to breach Grayskull's defenses, and could even summon the snake god Serpus through the medallion of Serpus. In Rattle of the Snake, he sends lizardmen into an ancient Temple of Serpus to recover that artifact so he can awaken the deity. In his 2002 debut, he also engineered the use of the Serpent's Ring that allowed him to transmute even the most powerful humans into snakemen. Compared to that, in the Masters of the Universe classics, toy line, and comics, Hiss's mystical abilities were amplified as he used the Staff of Ka to perform a dark ritual to have the evil gods transform him into a full serpent demigod. In the Masters of the Universe classics, toy line, and cosmic lore, this particular serpentine King Hiss form granted him semi-immortality and raw magical might. In that version, he even wielded a serpent-themed shield and snake staff. Thus, across multiple continuities, his arcane might keeps growing, ranging from the hypnotic eyes in the 1980s to near elder-level sorcery in 2002, the literal godlike serpent transformation in the Masters of the Universe classics toy line and comics. King Hiss's hybrid physiology always gives him an upper hand, almost allowing him to be immortal. King Hiss's unique physiology gives him extraordinary combat strength, and as you know, his upper torso is actually composed of 5 coiling serpents under a human disguise. In both toys and comics, he can peel off his fake skin costume to reveal this gruesome snake mass, wherein each snake has fangs and venom so he can bite or spit poison at his enemies. In the 2002 cartoon, Hiss's physical might is much more emphasized as he and his army easily overwhelm Skeletor and his warriors in battle. Hiss was strong enough to rout Skeletor's forces by himself, and he fought Zodak toe-to-toe in Castle Grayskull. His recovery from a near-death experience also demonstrates his resilience, because even after Zodak seemingly kills him, we see Hiss regenerate his central snake head and heal himself. This semi-immortality means he can survive lethal wounds that would kill ordinary He-Man villains. In all continuities of the Master of the Universe, King Hiss has always been the supreme ruler of the snakemen because he originally built a galactic empire of snakemen and even constructed Snake Mountain on Eternia. Plus, it certainly helps that he can devour his enemies or look through their mind like he did with Evil Lyn while trying to look for the secrets of Castle Grayskull. King Hiss also has many powerful artifacts at his disposal. I don't know if you have noticed, but we see King Hiss often use powerful snakemen artifacts to his benefit. Like in the 2002 series, he aggressively seeks the Medallion of Serpos and the Serpent's Ring. In fact, he has lizardmen raid the Temple of Serpos to seize the medallion, which he uses to summon the snake god Serpos in order to ride it into battle. But the Masters of the Universe classics toy line and comics continuity adds another relic, and that is Hiss's Staff of Ka. However, in the classics comics, while being in his human disguise, Hiss wields a serpent-themed staff and shield, which is sometimes called the Shield of Ka, and uses it as a focus for magic. Overall, King Hiss's arsenal of relics certainly amplified his magical command and always underscored his role as the Snakemen's king. Across continuities of the Masters of the Universe franchise, his power level has only grown. However, in every era, the core of King Hiss's power has been consistent on the themes of deadly snake sorcery, a fearsome serpent body, ruthless military command, and the mastery of snakemen lore. These abilities, be it hypnotic gaze and summoning in the mini-comics, arcane potency in the 2002 cartoon, or divinely empowered transformation in the Masters of the Universe classics, toy line, and comics, truly makes him one of Eternia's most potent threats. Well, that brings us to the very end of this video. Now tell me, was King Hiss and his snakemen army one of your childhood favorites too? More importantly, which King Hiss storyline was your favorite while growing up? Let us know about your thoughts and opinions in the comment box below.